Hi everyone, good evening, and welcome to our first Digital Child ACMI seminar for 2023. Some lovely familiar faces here who have been to the other seminars, so we welcome those that haven't been to one before, and here we are in 2023. And tonight's, as you can see, is the social worlds of children's digital play. For those who don't know who I am, I'm Louise Paatsch. I'm one of the CIs in the ARC Centre of Excellence for the Digital Child. I'm a professor at Deakin Uni. So I really warmly welcome you all both here in person, and we have a very large number of people from all over the world who are online. We believe we've got about 160 people, not to frighten those who are about to present, but... So first I'd like now to introduce you to our Deakin Acknowledgement of Country.
Deakin University would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of all the unceded lands, skies and waterways on which our students and staff come together. As we learn, teach, innovate and research through virtually and physically constructed places across time, we pay our deep respect to the elders and ancestors who have cared for the country that you join us from, an ancient place where education, innovation and knowledge transfer have taken place for many thousands of years. At Deakin, we aim to nurture and continue this important legacy whilst encouraging our communities to walk softly on country in the spirit of sustainability. In particular, we give gratitude to the elders and ancestors of Wadawurrung country, Wurundjeri country, and Eastern Maar country and beyond, where our physical campuses are located. Their contributions to our learning communities and environments are rich and highly valued. Deakin is committed to embedding Indigenous knowledges and perspectives in all disciplines that we teach, as well as advancing the self-determined interests of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, including treaty and truth-telling. As you move around our physical and virtual environments, take a moment to consider, appreciate, and listen deeply to the country beneath your feet.
Thank you. So for some context for this evening, as we all know, children are growing up in a digital society where digital play is part of their everyday, their diverse social worlds. And these social worlds include home, education settings, within the context of informal learning, such as museums, galleries, and theme parks. In the early childhood and the early years context, it's well established that play is at the very heart of childhood and is an essential part of children in their learning and their development. We all know that children's play involves the use of a range of digital technologies and non-digital resources where children create, explore, and actively engage in meaningful activities. But our big question, what is digital play? What constitutes good digital play? And what does digital play look like in practice in different contexts? As families, teachers, educators, children's program developers, ed tech developers, designers of digital play displays and exhibitions within community, we're all often faced with the challenge of understanding the actual role of digital in children's play. In addition, we have early childhood frameworks, we have curriculum guidelines that mandate teachers and early childhood educators support young children to explore, use, design and produce digital technologies for personal and social needs that encourage confidence, problem solving and new ways of thinking. So understanding digital play in their diverse social world and the pedagogical implications of the digital aspect of digital play is now an urgent challenge for us all. So tonight we are very honoured to hear from our panel of experts. Our first will discuss children's digital play in the home. We then move to hearing about digital play in the early years of schooling, and in this case in the foundation classroom. We then move to children's digital play in informal learning contexts, and in this case it's at ACMI. And then we conclude with children's digital play within the context of industry, and in this with early childhood education at the Australian Broadcasting Commission, known in Australia as the ABC. So I'd like to introduce our 4 panel members. Our first 2 we'll have the absolute delight of seeing on screen. Our first panel member is Dr. Fiona Scott, who's an internationally recognised researcher of children's digital lives. She has frequently collaborated with a range of external partners in research, including the LEGO Foundation, XR Games and CBs. She's an editor of the Journal of Early Childhood Literacy, a member of the editorial board for Reading Research Quarterly, and a member of the Academic Advisory Board for the Children's Media Foundation. Fiona's current research is focused on children's digital play and wellbeing. She's currently leading a large-scale research project funded by the LEGO Foundation and delivered with the LEGO Group and UNICEF in Ascenti. Fiona is also a lecturer in digital literacies in the School of Education at the University of Sheffield, where she is director of the Literacies and Language Research Cluster. Following Fiona, we have Jacqui Jarvis, who is a foundation teacher and a playgroup leader at St James Primary School in Sebastopol here in Victoria, where she has taught for 13 years. Her passion for play began early in her teaching career and took her to the United Kingdom in 2007, where she worked in a nursery and reception classroom in a low socio-economic area of London. And it was here that she found her love for working with neurodiverse and at-risk children. So when returning to Australia in 2010, she began work at St James Primary School, where her knowledge around how children learn and the fundamental place of play in the learning trajectory were consolidated. We then are followed by Dr. Britt Romstad, who's ACMI's Executive Director of Experience and Engagement. She's an experienced leader and communicator who has spent many years working to embed an audience-led approach to service design and strategy at ACMI. Britt champions data-informed decision-making and holds a PhD in cinema studies from the University of Melbourne. Our final presenter this evening on the panel is Laura Stone, who's an early childhood education producer at the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. With experience as an early childhood teacher and early learning consultant, she leads ABC Kids Early Education, an online destination for early years curriculum, aligned resources designed for the national early education and care sector. Laura builds opportunities for Australian research and stakeholder engagements to amplify the success of ABC Kids media and digital resources in educational and community context. Wow, there's a lot of important, wonderful people with so much experience, and it is my great pleasure that tonight I'm very excited to be listening to those 4 presentations. So if we could all give them a warm welcome. Thank you. And we'll start with Fiona.
Hello, thank you so much, Louise. Can everybody hear me okay? Brilliant. Thank you for inviting me to speak today, and to everybody attending. I'm really sorry I can't be there with you in person. I am presenting from the UK. I'm Fiona Scott, a lecturer in digital literacies at the University of Sheffield. And today I'll be starting us off by talking about the social worlds of children's digital play in the research context I'm most familiar with, the home. If you could move the slide, please. So to date, most of my research has focused on young children's digital lives, play and literacies in the context of the home. And today I'll be speaking broadly to three research projects. Firstly, my PhD project, which focused on preschool children's home engagements with television and related media. Secondly, the CTAP project, which was led by Professor Jacqui, and that focused particularly on children's learning and play with technologies in both the UK and South Africa. And thirdly, my current project, which is funded by the Lego Foundation, which focuses on children's digital play and well-being in 4 countries. I want to begin today by briefly emphasising the complexity of the terms digital play and also at home. So whilst the most recent project is more centred on digital play in terms of specifically digital and video games, all of the projects, including the latest one, adopt quite an expansive definition of digital play to incorporate a broader range of digital and non-digital activities. Some of these have historically been considered less playful somehow, such as watching television, and some haven't been considered as part of digital play at all. So, for example, physical role play, oral storytelling, or art and craft that draws on characters or narratives found in digital texts. Today, I am adopting this very broad, inclusive definition of digital play. All 3 projects have examined the social worlds of digital play, albeit in quite different ways. To do this theoretically, I've drawn primarily on ideas deriving in eco-cultural approaches to consider how different aspects of children's social experiences matter in understanding their digital play, such as the roles played by family members and peers, and the importance of different social communities and societal influences more broadly. Drawing on Lydia Plowman's account, I've also attempted to consider the roles that digital contexts and technologies play in expanding children's social worlds of the home. The design features of contemporary digital technologies, such as video calls, live in-game chat, and online fan communities, have repositioned far-flung friends, family members, and sometimes strangers within the context of the home, at the same time as they exist elsewhere. Again, this broad definition of home is what I speak to today. Methodologically, though, there's still more work to be done here, as the research support systems within universities are still fairly ill-equipped to deal with the complexities of research that crosses often and complexly across those in-person and digital and online contexts of the home. To give a simple example, in our current project, we gain rich insights by inviting unanticipated newcomers in the physical domain of the home to take part in the study. So, for example, if a grandparent is coming to visit, we'll usually ask if they'll be a formal participant in the study. We also actively conduct research in multiple physical homes. So, for example, if a child is looked after by 2 parents or sets of parents or carers in different homes, we'll try and visit both. However, at the moment, we don't have ethical clearance to invite virtual newcomers to the research to take part. So, for example, people the child plays with online. Likewise, we often capture aspects of social play through in-person methods, but we're not virtually present in online game contexts ourselves. So we don't, for example, have an avatar on the Minecraft server the child's playing in, which would be brilliant from a research perspective. Researchers, including people like Chris Bailey and Dylan Yamada Rice, have worked inside digital contexts like that before, but they do so by setting up safe, controlled virtual spaces like servers in Minecraft. More naturalistic world in virtual environments brings complex ethical challenges, and those challenges are something I'm thinking about in more depth at the moment. Okay, if we could have the next slide. For the rest of the session, I'm going to focus on 3 high-level reflections across my 3 home-based research projects. Firstly, the design features of digital play experiences are taken up differently by different children at different times in their lives, days or weeks. Next slide, please. In the RITEC project, we've been focusing on 2 digital games in some depth to explore how particular design features might support well-being. To conceptualise children's subjective well-being, we're using a framework developed by researchers in stage 1 of the project. So the game World of Goo poses tricky challenges to children who have to persevere and work out how to manipulate new materials in the form of goo balls to conquer levels of the game. For some children in the study, like 7-year-old Romeo, World of Goo afforded opportunities for problem solving and a sense of progression, fueled by identifying and applying logic-based rules. This appeared to fulfill Romeo's desire to engage with strategic puzzles, supporting a sense of accomplishment and competence, factors which we know are important for well-being. However, lots of children in this naturalistic study didn't play the game much, or even at all, after the first experience of playing, which they found frustrating, and some of them described it as stressful. One such example was 7-year-old Penny, for whom World of Goo didn't support a sense of accomplishment and competence. Conversely, though, one of her favourite games, Berry Avenue, which is a game within Roblox, did seem to support a very similar experience, which was in turn supportive of her own well-being. Penny really liked to come home from school and work in Berry Avenue by generating currency to spend on clothes for her avatar. Design features then are taken up differently by different children. This also appears to change, with different games appearing to serve different functions for children at different times in their lives, days or weeks. A final example of how digital games are taken up differently by different children comes in the case of 9-year-old Anna, who took part in the CTAP project. Anna frequently used the Play Kids app, both for its intended purpose of colouring and for her far more transgressive play in the form of her magic tricks. So Anna would colour a whale illustration in the game, and then she'd ask her mum, or sometimes our researchers, to close their eyes, opening them to find a real whale had appeared in the room in the form of her cuddly toy whale. So this was her magic trick. And it's just one example of a form of imaginative play that could never have been imagined by the app's original designers. If we could have this next slide, please. Secondly, and building on the ideas I've just introduced about different games fulfilling different functions for children, children's digital play at home serves different needs at different times, and these might sometimes seem contradictory. Next slide, please. I won't have time to explore all of the multiple examples today, but one is the way that digital play at home might afford children opportunities to experience, explore, and negotiate togetherness. Past research has explored the importance of digital play at home for supporting children's social play, not least in the recent context of the pandemic. For some of the children in our RITEC project, digital play was described as a lifeline for children who otherwise encountered challenges in connecting with peers, such as 10-year-old Jemima, who no longer attends school, and 9-year-old Pinar, whose sensory challenges make it hard to socialise outside of the home. Pinar plays in a private Minecraft server for local neurodiverse children, which has provided a very welcoming social space, which seems supportive of positive feelings about herself. Simultaneously, though, digital play appears an important context within which children can disconnect from social connection, indulging vital solo play, and also playfully subverting in-person social dynamics. 7-year-old Penny had been struggling with standing up to a close school friend, but recounted anonymously vandalising her friend's garden in Berry Avenue as a way of releasing her frustrations, granting her this sense of catharsis that doesn't seem to have been possible at the moment in her real life. Digital play also affords PNAR opportunities for these small acts of defiance, in which togetherness can be enacted through games that afford playful sabotage and mischief between players. PNAR gleefully told a researcher about a time when she blew up her mother's Minecraft house, and these instances seem to enable PNAR to exercise agency in shaping the interactions that unfold within episodes of togetherness. If we could have the next slide. So finally, digital play at home supports learning that looks like school learning, but it also supports learning beyond the forms of knowledge valued in school traditionally. Digital play at home is also important for positive outcomes and experiences that fall beyond this label of learning. If I could have the next slide. So my last two projects identified important types of learning supported by children's digital play at home, including subject knowledge and understanding, digital skills and literacies, including critical and cultural digital literacies, and more holistic skills such as creativity. However, my current research project is giving me a really useful opportunity to look beyond learning and to consider the important ways that a very rich and diverse diet of different digital play experiences at home support children's well-being by giving children a diverse range of opportunities. At times, of course, those are for learning or performing knowledge, but at other times to decompress and to not learn, to exercise and experience very different types of autonomy, competence, self-expression and control. If I could have the next slide. I'll end by highlighting some tentative implications of these recent studies. If I could have the next slide. It's important to say that my most recent research project, funded by the LEGO Foundation, is still ongoing, and we've not yet published high-level findings and conclusions. Drawing across all three of these home-based studies, though, I feel there are some important implications of this body of work. So firstly, thinking about the children's media industry, I think there's often an important aspiration here to produce high-quality digital content and experiences for children. If we accept, though, that children have different needs in relation to digital play, it becomes clear that there's no single version of what high quality looks like. There's a need then to attend to what children are showing and telling us, and to revisit what different children might need from digital play at different times in their lives, or indeed on different weeks or different days. Within children's rich diets of digital play, there's maybe a space for many different types of digital experience, which might be designed to meet particular types of needs. Thinking about teachers and early years practitioners, I think anxiety is about the risks and complexities of supporting, encouraging and embracing children's digital play in education and care settings are valid and understandable. But there are also risks to shutting down or excluding children's digital passions, alongside the risks that come with embracing them. There's a need to reflect then critically on what we consider to be of value in terms of children's digital play, and for these reflections to inform practice, even when digital play or the stimulus of play seems at first to be low quality or even problematic. If I could have the next slide. That's it from me. Thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to taking questions later.
Thanks, Fiona and Louise. As Louise said earlier, my name's Jacqui Jarvis, and I teach at a school just outside of Melbourne in Victoria. Our journey of play at St. James has been happening over the past 13 years. If I could go to the next slide, please. We have had a strong understanding and embedding of play throughout those 13 to 15 years. Before 2015, play was very much discovery, free play, very child-led, and the learning, us as teachers, aligned to the maths and literacy curriculum. We've been continually evolving, and now we have play throughout our school from foundation to year 6. There is much more specificity and nuance in our play, with many different types of play seen across those foundation to 6 years. We can see sensory play, pretend play, and especially on our storyboards, which I'll talk about a little later, a lot of mini world and symbolic play, as you can see in the pictures up on the screen now. So in the foundation year, we use the pretend play checklist, which you can see in the middle of the screen there, which has been written by Karen Stagnetti and Louise Paatsch, which has 9 levels of play across 5 different play skills: play scripts, sequences, object substitution, figurine and doll play. So we use all of that as soon as the foundation children come in, so that we can see what their play skills are like. And then we see when they are ready for secondary learning, or if they need to have some more play, we target that with modelled and guided play in small groups, just to help them increase their play skills. So some children will do that with us for the first couple of terms. Some children will be in guided and modelled play groups for the whole year until they're ready for secondary learning. So last year we began an action research project into digital play with Louise Paatsch and Susie Edwards. And if we can go on to the next slide, I'll explain a little bit more about that. Susie and Louise began with this provocation for us. All of the staff were given a Venn diagram with digital and play at the top, and we were asked to put 5 words for play, our understanding of play, and 5 words for our understanding of digital. Obviously, being a very play-based school, the play side was very easy to do. And what you see up on the screen there now is the words, a collection of the words that all of us put up. So play was obviously very easy. We found it we were able to do that very quickly, and we had lots of words, whereas the digital was a little bit less. A lot of the words were around tools, devices, screen time and things like that. So we didn't have a lot of vocabulary there for digital. As we were doing this, there was lots of discussion with the staff around our personal feelings into digital in our own lives. A lot of talk about our own children and ourselves, how much we're using digital technologies, coming out of COVID, and how we would like that to decrease a bit. So conversation there started about the good and the bad of digital. So what we did is conducted some research with the children and the parents. So if we move on to the next slide, please. We did some digital mapping. So the maps that you see up on the board, it was a generic house map. They were sent home with parents, and at school, the teachers did some data collection with the children. So first of all, we asked the children what they thought digital was. And understandably, they really struggled to tell us what that was. Then when we talked to them a little bit about what it could be, and we brought out the coloured pictures that you can see there, they started to talk about things that they had in their own homes. So the results were really fascinating. Children didn't really have any idea, and parents mainly talked about the obvious, the same as our staff had. They talked about tools, phones, TV, and gaming. The children were very open about what tech they had at home and where that tech was and how it was used, whereas the parents were a bit more guarded, and there was definitely discrepancies in where the digital was kept at home between the students and the parents. Some houses had a lot of technology, as you can see from this parent picture on the slide, whereas other houses didn't have a lot. Some parents had written in their comments that they weren't against digital in their children's lives, but they were trying to limit it. So they were happy for it to be around, but they didn't want them using it a lot. So as you can see, the picture up on the screen, the student on the left showed things like robo vacuums, TVs, iPads, and laptops, whereas the parents' version on the other side showed a very different story. They had a Tesla with a charging station. They had Wi-Fi watering systems in the front and back gardens, and they also had smart lights throughout the house. One thing that we were all we had never heard of was they had this Mario Lego, which is interactive and updatable. And so looking at this, especially from this parent who had so much technology in their lives, what we really realised was that technology wasn't just about screen times and devices. It was actually a lifestyle choice and could make life much easier for some people. And that's where we wanted to have a look at and go further. So if we could have the next slide, please. So in our second workshop with Louise and Susie, we were asked to again fill in some more words onto our Venn diagram. And as you can see, the digital words really came flowing after we'd gathered all of that data from our school children and parents. There was lots of crossover between the play and the digital words, and the discussion that we were all having as we were writing our words down was that really all of this is interconnected and most words could all go in the middle of the Venn diagram. So with Susie and Louise, we've been doing some further learning, especially in our foundation to grade 2 classes, about how we can incorporate more digital into the children's play in which we're already engaged in. So on the next slide, thank you. Susie and Louise shared with us some different theories of technology. So these were the 4 main theories that we looked at, but we really looked mostly at technological determinism and the critical constructivism. So the determinism is about technology being either good or bad, like I talked about earlier. And the constructivism is how humans create the digital for a purpose, and then users use it for however they would like to use it. Sometimes there can be a mismatch in the purpose of the technology or the value of the digital. And a great example of this is our reward cards. So corporations make reward cards so that they can gather data on us, so that they can streamline our shopping experiences. Whereas as consumers, we get rewards cards because we get something out of it. So there's a little mismatch in values there. And that's the exact same with technology. So what we've realised from the data and from conversations and looking at the theories of technology is that something that children actually already know. Digital isn't good, it isn't bad, it just is, and it's here. And so now we're looking at how we can make it work for us and to help us. And just like the parent had in their slide, thinking about how technology can make life easier and a better lifestyle change for us. So if I can go on to the next slide, I'm going to talk about how we introduced digital into our play. So at St. James, we use storyboards from foundation to grade 6, which are mini worlds like the tree you can see in the middle, which help us to make abstract concepts really concrete for the children. So on these storyboards, we play out stories, we play out the whole picture on the board, and then we take little parts of the board out so that we can talk to children and work out how we can make those abstract concepts really concrete for them. So last year, my teaching partner and I were teaching narrative through fairy tales. So this is the storyboard that we had. On the base, we had 4 traditional fairy tales. In the middle part there at the base of the tree, we had the exact same fairy tales, but a twisted version of those fairy tales. And in the canopy of the tree, we had little booklets with question marks on them, and that signified stories that the children were yet to write. So through modelled and guided play, alongside the pretend play checklist data, which we got earlier in the year, we used the storyboards as ways that we could increase children's play skills, but also to help them to write their own narratives. So you can see the pictures on the left and right-hand side, children playing out the stories that we'd read to them. This was a really great way we could check for the children's understandings of the stories and of the elements in the stories through the way that they played. So our really low players would often just copy the stories that we just played out for them, whereas our higher players would change elements of the stories, or they would even retell completely different stories. So in our storyboards, we add dilemmas, and that helps the children to be able to have discussions and collaborate together to work out solutions to these problems. So we modelled in one of our stories, one of the three little pigs walked into the Goldilocks setting. So it helped us to see how the children had understood character as well as setting, but then it also helped them to think of different ways of changing the stories. So with the new knowledge around the digital that Louise and Susie had been teaching us, we thought we'd add in a little digital dilemma for them. So if we go to the next slide, we had the children came in one morning and all the three little pigs and all of the billy goats gruff each had a mobile phone. So we asked the children, how could that help their stories, or would it hinder their stories if they had these technologies? And as you can see on the board, some of the things that the children said, they said pigs could Google, how do you get a wolf away? So they had an understanding of Google and searching. The pigs could order Dominoes for the wolf so he wouldn't eat them. So they had an understanding of ordering food online, tracking devices to track the wolf down, then call the billy goats and get them to come and get the wolf with their horns. So they had an idea about tracking devices and using Find My phone and that sort of thing. And then they could ring a wood chopper to destroy the wolf. So that understanding of being able to communicate through the digital. So what we realized was that they, as you can see, very creative ideas, which also showed us that they had a much wider knowledge of the digital than we'd considered, even from the data that we'd collected from them earlier. So realizing that there was more than we had thought in their lives, we had a look at that perhaps the digital, we didn't know that they might not have known that technologies were digital, but they certainly knew that these kind of digital technologies were around and that they could use them. So where we went to next on the next slide was how that translated into their independent play. So originally we put out some cardboard phones and iPads just in our home corner and in some of the role play areas. And at first the children were really hesitant to use it. We could see that really deterministic view that technology is bad and I shouldn't be using this in this way. And we had a little boy who normally wouldn't play in the home corner a lot. It just wasn't somewhere he was more into the construction and building. But when he saw these cardboard iPads in there, he sat down at the kitchen table one day and was sitting and scrolling on the iPad. And I just walked past him and he looked at me like he was doing something naughty and put the iPad face down on the table. So I just came and sat next to him on the table and picked up a phone that was also there. And I just said, oh, what are you playing? Could I join your game? So then we had this beautiful conversation about playing games online and joining games and sharing passwords and that sort of thing, which we wouldn't have had if I had have looked at him and thought, oh, why is he playing that, and just walked on by. So that shift in our pretend play and on our storyboards, it was like it gave the children permission to add digital in their play. And once we did that, we noticed a really big difference in their play. So there was little boys sitting on a couch with their little cardboard phones and they were playing Pokemon, and you could see them looking for Pokemon around the school and they were talking about which Pokemon they'd found. And they were having these beautiful little conversations and role playing in a way that we hadn't seen them do before. In the home corner, they were using laptops to be on offices, to have Zoom conversations and email the work that they needed to do. And in the schools, they were using iPads in the same ways that we would use them to support writing or numeracy. So alongside our fairy tale narrative, they also built their own fairy tale cafe outside where they served food from the stories. So there was Goldilocks porridge and Little Red Riding Hood cupcakes. Really great way to see another way to see their understanding of narrative and how they were reflecting that in their play. And I'm sure a lot of you would have been the same as me. When I played, when I was their age, it was cash registers. And when supermarkets brought in scanners, completely changed my play world. The little beep beep as I put all the groceries through really changed how I played. But I don't ever remember seeing myself or my siblings or friends playing with something like that was digital and thinking, oh, we shouldn't be doing this, this is bad. Whereas some of the kids today are seeing that. So when they set up their fairy tale cafe, the kind of technology that we were seeing them was really reflective of their lives and our lives over the past few years. So they had QR code check-ins, there was tap and go payments, they were using their phones to order online, they were using QR code ordering from the tables, and they were playing Spotify in the restaurant from their phones or iPads. So they added, as soon as we gave them that permission to add this into their play, they just took it and ran with it. So you can see we set up the table there where they could make their own devices. So lots made laptops, but the understanding or their familiarity with laptops was really different to what we saw on their iPads and iPhones. And you can see in the middle picture there, they added apps that they had obviously seen on their own devices or on parents' devices like McDonald's and Netflix and things like that. But then they also added apps for things that were important in their lives that they thought should be on there too, which was really cool. And if we move on to the next slide, please. So for our digital play this year, we're moving that along a step further. So we've sort of used last year as a bit of an experiment to see how they recognise digital in their lives. So now what we're doing this year is really trying to link that to the curriculum and looking at how digital can be, how we can give them even more digital understanding through their play. So most of the play that we're doing, they don't even use any technology to do it. It's all done through our role play or mini world play. So this year, our focus is on communication and the efficiency and the safety of communicating online. So as you can see on our storyboard here, on the picture on the left, we have a city and a farm on one side, and we have a beach and a jungle on the other side. So in the city got too crowded, and some of the people in the city, which was the discussion the children had, decided they would like to move to the jungle and try to rebuild their own city there. So that meant for us that the city obviously had buildings, and it has technology, and it has the internet. The jungle and the beach won't have that. So we're not at that stage yet with the children, but that's the stage that we're planning to get to with them. So at the moment, the discussions from the jungle side are a lot around what we need to survive. But on the city side, what they're realising is they don't have the water, the jungle has the water. So they're just starting to have discussions and think about how we can communicate with each other. So one of the ideas, luckily one of the characters in the jungle is a little duck. So the duck, kind of like a homing pigeon. So we've been looking back, and homing pigeons were an early form of communication. The duck took some of the communication over to the city. So they've been having these little conversations about, we need water, how are you going to get it to us? We need supplies to be able to build, how can we do that? So at the moment, they've just decided we need a point-to-point communication system. So we're drilling a hole through the wall that's been put up between the two parts, and they'll be able to communicate directly through just a pipe in the wall. But that's going to evolve to eventually be a router and have networks. So as they find problems in the communication, that communication will evolve, and all the time thinking about what will be safe for all the people on the game board, and how we can be most efficient. So they'll be able to do that, and we can't wait to see how that progresses over the year. And that's all from me. Thank you for listening.
Hi everyone. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands and waterways of Greater Melbourne, the people of the Kulin Nation, and recognise that ACMI is located on the lands of the Wurundjeri people. I'd also like to pay our respects to elders past and present, and warmly extend my acknowledgement to any First Nations people who may be here with us tonight. My name is Britt Romstad and I'm the Executive Director of Experience and Engagement at ACMI. And I'm really delighted to be here with you all tonight to participate in this discussion about digital play and share with you a little, just a snippet of what that looks like at ACMI. And I'm conscious of the fact that many of you may not have visited ACMI before and you may not know what we do. So I thought I should start by providing a bit of context, some background about the museum, because ultimately this really directly relates to how we approach play and digital play specifically. So, broadly speaking, this is our pitch. ACMI is your museum of screen culture, and we invite our audiences to come on a journey with us as we explore the world of film, TV, video games, and art together. In terms of content, which is really the broad remit of screen culture, there's no other museum like us in Australia. And more than that, our really invitational engagement model, which posits that this is your museum of screen culture, speaks to our desire to really create a reciprocity with our audiences. We're inviting everyone to come on a journey with us, which we can both learn from and be transformed by. So in this way, accessibility and approachability are at the heart of what we do and how we choose to do it. And that differentiates us from many museums actually, and play, with its focus on exploration, fun, and both cultivating and rewarding curiosity, it's a critical tool that helps us build this approachability. In 2019, ACMI closed for a redevelopment after receiving funding from the government. And when we reopened in February 2021 with our refreshed offer, we revealed new interactive exhibition spaces, state-of-the-art cinemas upgraded with 4K laser projection, revitalised education spaces where students and teachers can access cutting-edge technology and creative tools, a streaming platform for film, and of course a range of programs that are designed to build capacity in the digital space. And really, to that end, underpinning all the what we do is the who we are and why we do it. Fundamentally, we are a museum of digital literacy. And we can have all kinds of interesting conversations about exactly what that means, but one of the organising ideas for the development of our new museum, and especially our permanent exhibition, was to transform our visitors into empowered citizens by providing them with the skills that they will, and in fact do need, to navigate our complex, fast-paced and hyper-connected culture. We want visitors of all ages to emerge from an engagement with the museum with a sense of heightened curiosity and a new or increased interest in screen culture. And we're as interested in illuminating the process as we are in presenting the final product. We embrace innovation and experimentation, and the process of learning through experimentation is one of our organisational values. So play, which is really all about discovering more about the world and our place within it through exploration and experimentation, is in many ways both a really rich expression of this mission and also a key tool that we use to deliver it. And because we're ACMI, the digital is an absolutely fundamental component of this play. So, what is good digital play? What you're looking at is an image created using Midjourney, a generative AI program, using the text prompt, high fashion photograph of a 6-year-old technology-obsessed child fully immersed in the metaverse. And in many ways, I think this image serves as a great provocation for this question. We've sort of touched on this across the presentations tonight so far, but I'm not sure that the good-bad binary is necessarily a useful one for us in this space. So, like all play, whether traditional, analogue, digital, or a combination of all of those things, the best play enables children and adults, of course, to make meaning for themselves, to generate ideas, to forge new connections, and to participate in society. While the least interesting, the least rewarding, and the least transformative play tends to restrict creativity and shut down experimentation. So in the spirit of this, what does this look like at ACMI? Like traditional analogue play, however we want to describe it, we understand that digital play can be deeply personal, self-directed, it can be child-led, and it can offer new ways of learning through ideas, characters, settings, and activity type, according to the capacity, interests, and needs of the child. And it can engage children through a combination of imagination, tactile physical objects, and digital resources and technologies. And so at ACMI, our programs really offer a range of multisensory, interactive, and digital play experiences for children and adults. And these were designed to extend learning outcomes, inspire curiosity, provoke thought and inquiry, stimulate imagination and creativity, and foster social interaction and collaboration. And I guess I would note at this point that there is a real intentionality to this. So we're classified as informal learning in this part of the evening, but it's worth pointing out that the experiences at the museum are not unplanned or without rigorous consideration of outcomes. In fact, they were designed with a set of objectives and learning goals embedded from the outset. Fundamentally, the world is now undeniably and increasingly connected, online and digital. And by providing intentional and thoughtful moments of digital play, ACMI is really self-consciously and deliberately helping build new capacities and dispositions that will be needed to navigate the future. And in this sense, then, we can say the best digital play supports the development of a range of skills and capabilities that support better outcomes across society for everyone. And that's really the transformative piece. So I thought I could share with you just a couple of examples of digital play at ACMI, and it's hard to choose. I got wildly optimistic in what I could cover tonight, so I've had to narrow my focus, but I'll start with our permanent exhibition space, which is the story of the moving image. And this is our centrepiece exhibition. It's free and it's open every day. Featuring ancient shadow puppets, Victorian era magic lanterns, original cameras, costumes, movie sets, clips and contemporary art, the story of the moving image traverses time, countries and culture. And digital play is embedded across this content in a series of experiences where visitors can animate shadows, craft optical toys, experiment with time, assemble film scenes and create soundscapes in a series of experiences. I'm going to highlight this one. This is our Shadow Play Interactive, and it's one of the first that visitors encounter as they enter the story of the moving image. And we know that the story that's being told in this part of the exhibition is the fact that the first moving images and projections grew out of the simple manipulation of light and shadow. So hand gestures and paper cutouts crafted stories of wonder from elemental building blocks. And this is mirrored in this really simple interactive in which visitors use their shadows to become puppeteers. So standing in front of a screen, they move their heads and arms and legs, and their shadows morph to form fantastical creatures and characters like monsters, royalty, knights. The interactive works really well for very young children, and it supports a range of outcomes. In the context of the exhibition, it demonstrates that the play between light and shadow is one of the first instances of the moving image, and it connects with the development of cinema. It's physical play, it's self-directed, and it invites social interaction and cooperation amongst the participating visitors who may or may not know each other. That's the beauty of a museum. The imagery of the experience is very kind of broad brushstroke, and it leaves plenty of space for imagination to create characters and stories. And the performative nature of the work, as children or visitors stand in front of the screen and move their bodies while other visitors might be watching them, it can really help build confidence. So this is one of our first very simple and really effective moments of digital play as people enter this exhibition space. And later I'll show you an example from the education program, the Light and Shadow workshop, which really connects with this and this part of the exhibition and builds on these themes. Another piece of digital play that I'll talk you through now is what we call the edit line, and this was a piece that ACMI commissioned that really allows visitors to participate in the creation of an endless video mashup. Visitors are able to choose from 128 clips, and they're all, you can see there, these are blocks, and they've got single words, quotes and expressions printed on them. So the clips are represented on these blocks, and visitors can come and rearrange them to form kind of sentences and to create new films, essentially. So participating in this process, which is actually very tactile and analogue in a way, visitors learn about the plasticity of media in the digital era. They understand how memorable phrases from film and TV develop their own life and our social understanding. And they start to sort of understand the language of filmmaking and techniques. But we've observed over the time that the story of the moving image has been open that small children, despite all of those kind of intellectual processes, small children engage really effectively with this piece of digital play as well. So while they don't recognise the films that the quotes are drawn from, they really love spending time looking at the quotes and mixing up the language to produce their own meanings. And the beauty of this is once you've constructed this new sentence, this new story, it gets projected up on the screen and you can watch it come to light and come to life as it's paired with the clips from the films that they're drawn from. So with a piece of digital play like this, the edit line builds on language skills, developing wordplay and oral skills. It's also really leaning in, I guess, to the idea of cooperative play. And again, the museum affords many instances where children can come and play with other children that they don't know. They can be social, they can build those relationships. And of course, it's introducing some of those basic concepts around filmmaking. I want to talk a little bit about the education program because that's a huge piece of what we do at ACMI, and so far we've discussed digital play within our public museum spaces, but ACMI's program of creative workshops, interactive talks, exhibition experiences, and films and classroom resources, which are all centred around film, TV, animation, video games and digital art. They really work to build screen, media and digital literacy. They're designed to encourage critical and creative thinking, activate collaborative engagement and inspire ongoing learning. And they do connect with the curriculum across key learning areas. And they're also lots of fun. So that's reflected in the fact that thousands of children and teachers actually participate in an ACMI education program over the course of the school year. And I think this year we've had close to 70,000 education visits to the museum. And of course, like the rest of our museum spaces, play is an integral part of the education program, and that's reflected here in the range of activities and outcomes that are promoted through the programs. I wanted to highlight the Light and Shadow workshop, and this is an example of a workshop that was developed by the education team for younger children, and it directly connects with the content in the story of the moving image and the shadow puppet interactive that we saw earlier. The images that you can see here were taken during a pilot of the workshop that was conducted with St Albans Heights Primary School, who we have a partnership with. And I will spruik that you can read more about that partnership on our website. One of the educators, Susan Bye, has written a really amazing piece about it. During the redevelopment, the education team worked really hard to create a new suite of programs and worked closely with St Albans Heights, the leadership team, teachers and pupils to create programs that would best support their learning. And this was one of the workshops. So in terms of components to the program, students who participated learn about the history of shadow puppets. This is supported, as I mentioned, by a visit to the exhibition, The Story of the Moving Image. So they see the content there, they play with the shadow puppet interactive. So they start to piece together the story, which is a sort of foundation story for the beginning of cinema. And then they start to build on this, they're encouraged to build on this to understand how light and shadow and shape can be used to create artworks through using sort of physical boxes and built components, which are then transformed when light is added. Once they've done that, they can then experience this in digital form, and I'll show you what this looks like. So it's such a simple idea and yet so beautiful and evocative in terms of the output. We get the gist of that. So in terms of the outcomes for children participating, so obviously there's a real piece here around the creation of imaginary worlds and experimentation, world building and storytelling. There's the opportunity to work together as kids break into pairs and learn to connect with others and share their ideas. And that's obviously a huge learning piece. Part of that is building on communication skills and developing the capacity to articulate your ideas and to negotiate as well for your ideas and for outcomes. Problem solving and creativity is at the heart of a workshop like this. And as I've mentioned, the children get to build the physical form and then experience it in digital form as well. So it's a really beautiful mix of digital and traditional play. So, as I'm working towards the end of this, I wanted to just point out, in terms of museums and what our mission is at ACMI, there's a real piece here around digital transformation and equality. And we know that those without access to the digital realm are at a real disadvantage in our world. And research shows that digital inequality conforms along the lines of social inequality. So technological capacity is unevenly distributed across audiences, and barriers to digital transformation fall along existing social divisions. So, as technological innovators in the museum sector, ACMI particularly are really well placed to do some heavy lifting in terms of building digital equity, and that's the work that we're doing through our programs and our permanent exhibition spaces around widening access and deepening participation through things like our collaboration with St Albans Heights Primary School, through our dedication and commitment to approachability and our engagement model, and through building opportunities for digital play. In summary, play is for everyone. And at ACMI, we've really carefully designed a permanent exhibition experience that privileges digital play. As you've seen, we use a combination of traditional and digital to engage visitors, connect them with each other, build worlds, tell stories, and create space for experimentation. And in this way, digital play works, as I mentioned, as both an expression of our mission and a vehicle for achieving it. And furthermore, we understand that by facilitating good digital play, we're better equipping our visitors, and especially our young visitors, our children, to thrive in an increasingly digital world. Thank you.
So, good evening, colleagues and friends. There are some friends in the room, which is so exciting. It's so good to see some real life familiar faces. I'm just loving it. The opportunity to be here in real life is really special. And thank you to Loretta, who helped to make this actually happen. It nearly didn't. We were sort of down to the wire, weren't we? So thank you. I feel like we're riding a wave of inspiration now and fizzing a little bit from the first speakers, and thank you so much to Britt as well. Hearing and reflecting upon the fascinating worlds of children's digital play, and I am just so delighted to be part of this event. As an early childhood teacher first and a children's media producer second, I'm now very much involved in the rapid-fire industry of children's media and digital product development. And by association, I engage with evolving ideas around children's digital play in a fairly detailed web of ways. And I'll aim to unpack as much of that as I can over the next short while. Okay, so for my contribution to this end of the conversation, I'm guided, like most of us working directly or indirectly with children, by the overarching definition of digital play from Early Childhood Australia's statement, which, as we know, considers children in many combinations of activities using a range of resources, digital and non-digital, either by themselves or in collaboration with others. Working in children's media often means thinking and planning in story worlds, so I'd like to default to storytelling and visuals to launch into my part of this discussion. And as we can see there from Toy Story, we are in digital days. Woody's looking a little bit tentative, but Buzz Lightyear's kind of wanting to forge ahead, the opening to the learning galaxy. So let's move along. My first example here from the Wondrous Play School, we see, do we see her? Yes, we see director Jemima behind the scenes with Leah as they play together. They're creating a stop-motion film using a touchscreen device propped up in an egg carton. Leah animates stick puppet animals in a craft diorama and tells a story as their recording app captures and compiles their movie. Behind them on set, we see a desktop computer made of folded cardboard showing colourful collage apps on screen. There's a paper TV and a radio. We also see a bunch of techie-looking buttons and knobs made from upcycled bottle lids and foil. Classic play school. Lots of enticing tactile things to explore and experiment with. If this TV idea, devised by early childhood teachers in collaboration with showbiz producers, was transferred to an early learning classroom or home, this combination of resources and learning experience ideas would form the basis of rich dramatic play, and it would also be digital play. Play School has always set out to inspire young children to engage in real-world learning through play. After children have watched, there are many ways that we can support them to go beyond the screen and to reflect on what they've viewed or heard and take an idea or learning concept and explore it further through play in real life. To turn viewing into playful doing, if you will. Next one. Now we see Bluey and Bingo using a drawing app while on a video call to their cousin Muffin. They add funny drawn details and dress-ups as a digital overlay while they chat and have fun together. They squabble about sharing and taking turns while Uncle Stripe unsuccessfully tries to impose limitations. Muffin takes off around the house, phone in hand, and mayhem ensues. Anyone who's watched this episode of Bluey called Facey Talk will attest to its clever and relatable reflection of everyday life in the home and how digital technology, whether real or imaginary, can become an effective tool in play. This is also digital play. In all ABC content for children, we provide reflections on a range of social worlds, on friendships, on families, and connections within a community. Social worlds are always inherent to storytelling, so it goes without saying that authentic reflections on digital engagement as a meaningful part of children's experience often plays a leading part. Some of the most popular episodes of Bluey reflect digital play in the home. For example, Grannies, we'll remember that one where they do the flossing, and an episode called Phones. In this episode, in the slide at the top, of Early Learning Little Talks with our esteemed colleague over here, Professor Susie Edwards, this is a little social media piece of content available via ABC Kids Online. Professor Edwards discusses the big ideas of Zygotsky in relation to a Bluey episode called Octopus. Susie reflects on how children's lived experiences enhance their imaginative play. The characters use the internet to research fun facts about octopi, and they played out those discoveries together and with their dads. Now, I'll use that example with Susie to take me to the next section. I'll use that as a bridge to take me from how digital play can be reflected in child-facing content to how big ideas around digital play can be incorporated into teacher and parent-carer resources. So it might seem like a bit of a shaky link, but you'll see how that is actually quite legit as I move along. Okay. Early education is now an integrated strand of ABC Kids business. It's a platform that speaks directly to the sector and curates content according to early years curriculum priorities. To nod to our seminar abstract, early education at the ABC considers audience engagement in informal settings, in early learning contexts of all kinds, in school settings and in the home. So resources to support the integration of children's digital play in holistic early childhood planning and practice is definitely a priority in my work. In choosing what ideas to run with for ABC Kids Early Education, I felt it was safe to assume that educators interested in accessing high-quality media for children would also be interested in educator extension support materials, encouraging digital play as a key element of a holistic and responsive early childhood curriculum, along with things like music, movement, language, literacy, STEM, and the arts. In my view, digital play can be integrated into all of those areas. When considering where the opportunities lie, our goal is to remain competitive and viable in a market overflowing with digital product choices for children, families, and educators. We are like the inflatable man, hopefully not sort of at the second-hand car yard, but nevertheless, imagine all of these nodes as our competitors in this space. We know that free and equitable access to technology across different communities is not a given, but we do know that at least 97% of Australian households do have access to the internet and have an average of at least 7 connected devices. With access to that hardware in mind, the ABC competes in a commercial environment that provides streaming services, digital radio, video and audio, on demand, apps, websites and games. The ABC revolves around creating and distributing a wide range of distinctive digital content. What does that mean? So to be distinctive, our charter is to offer content that's uniquely Australian, that reflects the priorities of our diverse national audience, and that is innovative, entertaining and informative. Fortunately, ABC audience insights data shows that over the past 18 months, ABC Kids has received the highest score of any ABC property around audience loyalty, satisfaction and enthusiasm. Now, I'm not just saying that as a brag. I think because it's the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, this is a success for all of us. So that's kind of the context in which I share that little bit of information. Further to that, because I spoke about Play School, interestingly enough, Play School ranks #1 across entertainment and specialist at the ABC for diversity and quality, and it receives about 96% for both. Bluey ranks 98% for quality and 97% for distinctiveness. So given that level of trust and brand loyalty, we are so well positioned to keep growing in this space, and anyone, collaborators, you know, this is how we end up creating great content together. Over a decade ago, the ABC offered one of the first apps, let me click my slide, in the world that could honestly market itself as being open-ended and reflective of children's creative and artistic play. That was called Play School Art Maker, and that was developed in close collaboration with Dr. Kate Highfield, who's another esteemed colleague in this space, focusing on the convergence of traditional and digital play. Now, just this week, just a couple of days ago, ABC Kids Listen launched its first smart speaker skill, featuring the best audio content for little ears. Now, if you're not familiar with smart speaker skills, think of opening up your favourite audio experience simply using the power of voice. This digital product will be free, screen-free, and easy to use even for our youngest consumers. Even if you're still trying to wrap your tongue around tricky sounds, for instance, it'll still work successfully. This is really an exciting time to tune into what's available and accessible for children, and us as adults as the gatekeepers of opportunity, to understand what potential for multifaceted engagement exists now and as children grow. Now let me dive a little bit deeper now into websites, games and apps. As children live in a tech-connected society, digital play helps with the development of essential literacy and numeracy skills, as we know. Games and apps leveraging on children's interests in TV programs are enticing on a range of levels, and if they're well designed, such as the case with Play School Art Maker, they are multimodal, meaning they integrate images, written words and or sounds, and some are also interactive in that they are responsive to touch, voice, typing and other inputs. There were some great multimodal examples that Britt gave us before. Play with digital games can ignite children's natural curiosity, encourage problem solving, build language skills and maths understandings while enhancing digital and multimodal literacy. Families, like educators, are vital in generating quality early years outcomes, particularly if parents recognise the importance of engaging in their child's education in partnership with early childhood educators, and consider how engaging with digital devices at home can be more than just screen time and extend to optimising screen use. It's pleasing to see that screens are now commonly regarded as one of the many tools we can use to reflect children's interests and explore the world, rather than something to resent or gingerly ration using the same logic as we might for sugary drinks or lollies. Technology can be used as a spark to extend upon children's interest, to support and build relationships, and to foster critical and creative thinking. Now, certainly in my view, the inclusion of media and digital technologies can enhance and complicate the learning environment to allow for more wonder and playful possibility. When we think about digital play in early education, it's often intertwined with pop culture. Digital play at home and in early learning is influenced by familiar characters, imaginary worlds, and stories for children to reference in all kinds of ways. In my mind, this interplay creates a helix. Children's digital play is multidimensional and layered depending on a range of variables. So the helix becomes a metaphor, a three-dimensional spiral where tech hardware use, popular culture engagement, children's social worlds and their play intertwine and connect. By acknowledging children's interest in pop culture in more meaningful ways than just commenting on the picture printed on the back of somebody's backpack or recognising a character's catch cry when it's yelled out in the playground, we can harness the richness of digital play and maximise valuable opportunities to engage with and extend children's early understandings. And we know when we do that well, we build their sense of belonging, being and becoming in the digital age. The helix of popular culture in digital play can build opportunities for learning, and it's certainly my goal when working at the ABC to build in opportunities to encourage children to wonder and keep thinking beyond the screen. I just realised it's down here. That's so handy. Through working with teachers and families, I've observed that part of this goal can be achieved when grown-ups co-view, then consider ways to co-design play. We hear about the notion of a digital playground, where we can play together and inform engagement pathways collaboratively. Many of us adults haven't grown up in digital playgrounds ourselves, and we might not know how to insert ourselves into the game, so to speak. Play evolves, it always has, as is shown in those pictures there. They're good ones. It doesn't mean that we lose what has come before, but it does mean that if you don't get involved too, there's no handy bridges in the playground to jump from one thing to the next. Just as children are often so open to do, it's just fun to turn up and to be open to the possibilities. And to close, I would just reiterate that we know the digital world doesn't exist as a parallel place to opt in or out. It's what's happening right now. Children see it and they touch it, and they hear it and they wonder about it, and if they're doing all of those things, they'll also want to play in that world in only ways that their imagination can determine. I know I'm speaking to a room of converts, so let's encourage all those we work with to show up for children in this playground and play along. Thank you so much, everybody.
Can I first of all just say a very, very huge thank you to our four presenters tonight, and what an array of experience and incredible story. So thank you everyone that came. And now we'll open up for a little bit of Q&A. So we'll have some online, which Loretta is going to monitor here, and we'll open up to our audience. So we have two obviously here physically and two online, both Jacqui. And I'd just like to say another little thank you to Jacqui. She's actually got COVID and couldn't come, so she's done a pretty amazing job to do tonight, so thanks, Jack. And I don't know what time it is over there for you, Fiona, but...
About 9:30 in the morning, so it's getting a bit more civilised.
So thank you. All right, let's open up. Questions? Comments? We've got... Loretta will bring you the mic, and I'll also get off here.
I just had a quick question. Oh, first of all, thank you. That was actually really a fantastic session to kind of wonder and think about, so thank you. I do have a question for Fiona, just going back to what you were talking about earlier around digital play versus real life. And I was just wondering whether you observed if children actually identified that that was separate, or is that separate for them? Like, is there actually a separate digital life to a real life? I appreciate the fact that blowing up your mum's house in Minecraft is a bit different to real life blowing up your mother's house, but I'm intrigued by whether they separate it or it's just one life.
Yeah, so I think, it's a complicated question. I know we haven't got a lot of time. There's been a lot of discussion about this sort of question, and a lot of sort of talk about the post-digital and the idea that we're moving beyond a point where people can easily separate out digital and non-digital. And we know that from a child's perspective, these things are much more seamlessly integrated, perhaps than we grew up with, and that they do perceive them in that way. Having said that, it's important not to go too far, I think, with that discourse, because it's important to remember sort of really early work about things like modality, when you're talking about an example like the one you just mentioned, children do view how they behave in sort of a different contexts very differently. Sort of very early TV studies focused a lot on how children make these judgments based on an understanding of modality. So things like violence that happens in a cartoon can be funny, even though if it happened in a live action show, you know, seeing somebody hit somebody else with a hammer would not be funny. And that extends also to the modality of real life. So I think both things are true. And I would say that children definitely, the children in our study had an understanding that there are some things that are socially acceptable in a digital game that might not be in real life, but also that's a really complex thing, and it's something we've talked about a lot as a research team, because obviously there are implications of those sorts of acts in digital play as well.
This just comes from an online attendee for Fiona as well. They say, fantastic talk. You mentioned different games serve different functions for different children. Have you identified some of these factors?
Yeah, so this is something that I'm working on. It's a very intensive period in the project at the moment, lots of analysis of the data sets from all 4 countries. And we are looking at sort of a kind of listing or typology of those different functions. I mean, obviously it harks back to sort of, you could look at things like uses and gratifications theory, but we're starting from a bit more of a blank canvas. So stuff around togetherness and social interaction, things that children need in terms of a sense of being able to express and explore identity is really important, but also some things around just being able to decompress. Children talk a lot about the pressures that they increasingly face. You know, school was challenging when I was a child, but I think even more so now. Digital play is offering an escape, you know, when they come home, much as you know, we watch a Netflix series, coming home and decompressing and sort of having a space to switch off a bit, as well as a space to switch on in terms of digital play. So lots of different examples, and I think difficult to talk about all of them in one go.
Thank you. So we've got another question online from Susan Danby, who's actually the director of the Digital Child Centre. She said, thank you to all the presenters for such interesting presentations. To play along is such an important concept, an action for everyone engaging with children. I often remind families of how they might remember playing Monopoly when they were young, as family game activity has often shifted to surveillance rather than family play. Does the panel have suggestions for how to support families to play along?
Thanks, Susan. Do you want to start, Laura, and then maybe Britt, do you want to, and then we'll go to the 2 online. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's good. This is not on, is it? Yes, it is. Yeah, I love that idea of playing along and showing up for children, because I think that is something that really great early childhood educators have just as part of their daily business, and of course families can be involved in that too in so many different ways. One of the things that the ABC is very committed to is creating resources to align with our viewing content, so that if families are so inclined, they can go online and just check out a whole myriad of really well researched and super accessible, easy to read, quick ideas, a range of different resources that can either be as quick as a little idea that might spring up on a Facebook feed, for instance, a quick way to extend on a Play School episode, for instance, or something that goes into a bit more detail if parents want to go dive a little bit deeper. So I suppose that's one of the things that we do in a fairly proactive way around resource development and distribution, to align with content that just helps to scaffold that bridge a little bit between what you're viewing and then what you can go on and playfully do, if there is that need for a few more kind of sparky ideas around how to get from one place to the other. Because I don't think it's always instinctive. So that's very much from my point of view around what we watch that is definitely active engagement and doing, but it is very different to kind of actively playing, right? So I suppose to be able to think of those ideas that do go across the different aspects of children's more traditional play, the things that we're more familiar with or perhaps families are more comfortable with, those ideas around dramatic play, STEM-based play, all of those sorts of things, lots of little provocations to help families along that track, I guess.
Yeah, I agree, yeah.
Just in terms of ACMI, I guess we're in a slightly different position, because when children come in with they're coming in with their families or with sort of older people. So one of the things that we did as we were planning the new museum in our public spaces was the idea of creating those moments of play that could quite intentionally exist as co-play spaces. So, you know, for shadow puppets, for instance, there's the capacity for a parent and child to do that together. And you'll see that through the museum when you visit the story of the moving image. Most of those real moments of focused digital play afford a social aspect. So and if it's not your parent, then it's someone else in the museum. So there's that nice, it's built into the design of those experiences, I think.
I think so, yeah. Jacqui, did you want to add anything from a school?
Well, I'll just add, because I love that you've put on there playing Monopoly, because as I spoke about earlier, I think a lot of the conversation that we had at school when we started looking at digital and play was around, you know, that children being on devices or screens and how we could get them off them a bit more. And I know certainly as being a mum, I've had that discussion with myself and with my family and people at school, but we're currently moving house and have boxes everywhere, but in the lounge room have a box full of all the board games, and the kids have just been every night getting them out. So I think it's also just having that available and somewhere easily to access and giving them that time to just sit. I mean, we've been pretty much, you know, 10 to 15 minutes every night before we go to bed, a little game together, which has been really nice for us to come together as a family. So just having that available and easy access for the kids to reach too.
Can I say one more thing on that? Because
Yes, sorry.
Can I?
Do it. Yes, I can't see who's talking.
It's me. I think I'd just be missing a trick if I didn't, particularly because it was the esteemed Susan Danby who asked the question. We have been involved in a really great research project that really engages the community, and particularly one of the groups that we've worked with is Playgroup in Western Australia, and it's been looking at ways that the families engaged in playgroups are using digital technology in the home actually, and it's looking at particularly the transitions of, you know, from moving from a device into other types of activities and play, or how you might engage more proactively with your child while they're watching. So all of that kind of stuff is very much putting research into action and then looking at how to translate that research for a wider audience via our ABC network. So that's something that we've really enjoyed doing. Yeah.
Thanks, Laura. Loretta, have we got time for one more?
Yeah.
Is anyone in the room got a burning question? No, maybe one more from online if there's one. Loretta, thank you.
So any clue for teachers and content developers to compete with commercial games in societies like Hong Kong, where smart devices are ubiquitous and some parents are inclined to use as e-pacifiers?
Who would like to open up with an answer there? Laura, do you want to? Yeah, go for it. Oh, sorry, I'll go to perhaps Fiona first and then I'll go to you, Laura.
Yeah, I'm just happy to speak to that. I guess I think sometimes the language we use around children's use of technology, and I guess this connects with the first question as well, some of the language I think is sometimes problematic, because I guess one of the points I want to make is that digital play might fulfill different functions at different times, and to some extent, as problematic as it sounds, I think parents in the society we live in, parents have very little time, and sometimes using technology as an activity that children enjoy, that they can lead themselves, isn't necessarily, you know, using it as an Eve pacifier. I don't think we would apply the same label to reading a book. Having said that, I think I would also say that there is a space for commercial games, if I've understood the question correctly. I think that there is a space for sort of games that have been designed with very educational outcomes in mind, but also that children get a lot, sort of coming back to my presentation, from games that don't necessarily very clearly have explicit education outcomes. They can still be really important to children's well-being. So it's not really advice, but I guess it's just sort of pushing back a little bit on that point and saying that maybe within a sort of digital play ecosystem there is space and there is value in these different sorts of play.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Fiona.
Do you want me to just chime in a little bit there? I think from an ABC perspective, it's quite an interesting question, because obviously we're in the game of creating content that children do really want to watch and engage with, and that families want to watch and engage with as well. I think from an ethical point of view, from an early education background, you know, we can put a lot of effort into creating content that we know has got really sound educational outcomes as well as being entertaining. So therefore that fear around just pure pacification is something that perhaps is slightly diminished, because we know that obviously, you know, it's not ideal for children to be watching hours and hours and hours and hours of screen time. I think that's the difference, is this conversation, it's still evolving. What's the difference between screen time and screen use? Because we're very much hooked on this idea of the fear of screen time, and it's all very terrifying and detrimental. Now we're evolving into this space of positive use for technology and being more in control of it rather than it being in control of you. So I think at the ABC, obviously, we're not interested in parenting the parents, but what we can be doing is engaging in discussions exactly like this and working with researchers in the space who are all working around shared goals. And, you know, people like, you know, Britt, and in museums and in other places where children are engaging with technology and digital content in creative ways. That's a very umbrella-like way to answer that person's question. But I suppose it's just encouraging families to think beyond that idea of screen time and think more about what's the value of the child's use in that moment. And I think that would alleviate some of that fear and guilt around that word pacification.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Laura. I'm just... please do. Can we just have a microphone to there, and then time? I know Loretta is keeping my watch to the right time.
It's just I've got Fiona here, and I can't, like, I think it's amazing. Like, you're all talking so beautifully and sharing so much about play, and I so love how, Laura, you brought wonder into it and sort of spoke to the magic of play. And it's almost like play belongs to children, right? Like, we sit here and academicize and use all these big words, and we say play is learning, but for children they would never say play is learning, they're just saying we're playing. And so I'd love Fiona to talk a little bit more about, if you could, about that work you're doing now to sort of say, you know, it doesn't have to be just for learning. It doesn't, like, there's something else. I'd suggest it's arrogant to think that we fully will ever understand what play is and does, because it is so, we just can't. There's something about it. It's part of the human condition that we do it. And I'd just love to hear more of you on that in terms of where your thinking is on that now, given the work you're doing.
Fiona, have you got 30 seconds to answer that question?
Of course, yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm not sure who the question was from, but that was a lovely question, very much sort of connects with my thinking. I guess my starting point is that, you know, traditional play theory, traditional understandings of what children's play is for, are much broader. And I've kind of pointed out in my work before, I find it actually very strange that sometimes when we look to digital play, there is this increasing acceptance that it can be valuable, but only if it's sort of ticking off some sort of particular learning outcome. And we know that good play needs to fulfill much more diverse functions. You know, including some of those negative things sometimes. You know, I like to highlight the examples where children are doing things that look like potentially, you know, conflictual or problematic, you know, burning somebody's house, because actually children have always done those things in their play, and there is a reason, and play is a safe space sometimes for processing difficult emotions, as well as all of those other functions around, you know, learning and negotiating your identity and how you relate to others. So I'm aware I've not got much time, but I really value that question, and I hope that's helpful.
And can I just add, absolutely, I mean, that's one of the things that we've built a whole museum space around, is the fact that play is for everyone, not just for children. So that's definitely something that we champion at ACMI, for sure.
Thank you. Well, I'm sorry that time has run out, but can I get you all, both online and here face-to-face, to show our enormous appreciation of our 4 speakers. So thank you. And as we all head off, and I think what you've highlighted is that it is part of children's social world, and it's complex, it's diverse. We've got all the affordances of communication, social literacy, STEM, wonder, creativity, problem solving. We've got the digital equity challenge that leads to the social equity challenge. We've got the enormous task of understanding the digital and supporting children to have the language to understand the digital as well as the adults, around safety, around the skills and the outcomes. We've got digital play into resources. We've got the equitable access, as Fiona says, not to shut it down, as Jacqui said, in the drawings between the parent and the children, and both what ACMI and ABC do around the equitable access. There's also what's come through, I think, enormously is the role of adults and the role of parents, educators, designers and developers, and as we work together to understand further about what is digital play and what is good digital play. So thank you all very much for coming this evening, being online as well this evening, and have a great evening or morning for all those people. I know there are some international, and safe travels for those driving, and off to work for you, Fiona. Thanks, everybody.